Let's talk about how you can find the subject of a sentence. Now, a lot of people ask the wrong question when they want to find the subject. So they say, well, what is the sentence about? What is it about? And it's much better to ask a more specific question. You should ask who or what. It's good to just memorize this question. Who or what is doing the action of the verb? So we're just going to represent this as who or what plus the verb. And we're talking about the main verb here. So in the first example, 15 mustachioed gangsters walked into the bank. Our main verb is walked. So there's our verb. And then we apply our question. We say, well, who did the walking? And in this case, we would say, well, the gangsters did the walking. So there's our subject. If you want to be more specific, you can also distinguish between the simple subject, which is gangsters, and the complete subject, which is the simple subject with all of its modifiers. So that would include 15 and mustachioed. There's one other term that you want to know before we move on, and that's the term predicate. I actually don't like that word that much, but some people find it useful. So the predicate is everything that's not the subject in the sentence, everything that describes the subject. And we would say then that walked into the bank is the predicate. So if you find that term helpful, then by all means use it. I find it more helpful just to talk about subjects and main verbs, and then the other parts of speech, the other part of the sentence you can analyze at some other point. Okay, we're going to look at a few more sentences here just to see how things can get a little bit tricky at times and what you can watch out for. So in this example, it's my mum on the phone. Again, it's easy to look for shortcuts. So a lot of students would look at this and say, well, I don't really see a verb. I'm just going to see what the sentence is about. And so maybe it's about my mum. That looks like it could be the subject, or it's about the phone. But if we apply our question rigorously, and that's the key, we would say, well, there is a verb here. It's the verb is, which is part of a contraction in this case. So if we ask the question, well, who or what is my mum? Then technically, we would say, well, it is my mum. So it is the subject. I know that seems really weird, but grammatically, it is the subject. And that's where you have to be rigorous in applying this question, and don't be fooled by these little words. So don't just think, well, it has to be the biggest word in the sentence or whatever seems significant. Grammatically, it doesn't have to be. Okay, so that's the second thing we've noticed here. Let's look at our third sentence, and this one shows that a subject can be quite long. So our subject is the topic of our lecture today, and then we have our verb here. It's another linking verb here, is, and then we get all of this stuff afterwards. So you can see here that the topic of our lecture today is quite a lengthy subject, and subjects often have bits added to them. So in this case, we have of our lecture, which is a prepositional phrase. You can put it in brackets, you can ignore it if you like, but it has all been kind of added on to the main subject. Two more sentences. So the fourth one here reads, the electric battery was invented by Alessandro Volta. And in this case, what we have is a passive verb. So instead of saying, well, somebody invented something, instead we have was invented by. And this one can fool you because you might say, well, was invented, who did the inventing? Well, it was Alessandro Volta, so that must be the subject. But if we're going to be rigorous, then we would say, well, who or what was invented? And we would have to say the electric battery was invented. So this is our subject, even though the action of the verb is kind of happening to our subject. And that's the case with passive verbs. So watch out for those. One more to have a look at here. When the snake charmer opened his snake pot, we held our breath. Okay, so what this one shows is that a sentence can actually have multiple subjects and multiple verbs. And that's because what really has a subject and a verb is a clause, and you can add multiple clauses to a sentence. So in this case, we have opened is the first verb, and then we say, well, who or what opened his snake pot? And we would answer that with the snake charmer. So there's our subject. And then after the comma, we have another clause. So we have held is our verb. And we is our subject, so who held our breath? We did. And now we can see that we have actually two clauses. So a couple of clauses here. And then we have to figure out, well, what kind of clauses are these? So just to kind of quickly summarize here, not to spend too much time on this, we can say, well, we held our breath. That can be a sentence by itself. So that's an independent clause. And then when the snake charmer opened his snake pot, that cannot be a sentence by itself. So that one is dependent. And it's dependent because of this conjunction when, which ties all of this first part to the last clause. Okay, so that's it for the introduction to subjects. Look for the main verb, ask the right question, and you'll be able to find it.